For most Pokemon, it's pretty easy to say whether or not they're legendary. But for one group of Pokemon, it's been a complicated subject ever since they were introduced. And that group is known as the Ultra Beasts. Ultra Beasts were these new alien creatures with complex designs that made them stand out among other Pokemon. They were also strong and quite rare, so naturally, some players began to ask, are Ultra Beasts legendary? But what seemed like an innocent question would spark a massive debate, one that would divide the Pokemon community, span over 6 years and multiple game generations, and lead to a big step by the Pokemon company itself. This is the story behind Pokemon's legendary Ultra Beast debate. In November of 2016, Pokemon Sun and Moon were released. These games officially introduced 7 Ultra Beasts to the Pokemon world. Nihilego, Buzzwole, Pheromosa, Xurkitree, Kartana, Celesteela, and Guzzlord. Some players looked into the game's code and discovered a new subcategory of legendary Pokemon known as sub-legendaries. These were mainly legendary Pokemon that didn't appear on the cover of the games or were related to them. The Pokemon included in this category were the legendary birds, the legendary beasts, the Regis including Regigigas, Latios and Latios, the Lake Trio, Heatran, Cresselia, the Swords of Justice, the Forces of Nature, Type Null and Silvally, the Tapus, and to many players' surprise, all 7 of the Ultra Beasts. Although the game's code categorized the Ultra Beasts as sub-legendary Pokemon, many felt that they didn't belong. Players saw this as a moment where the game didn't quite match up with the lore. But there wasn't much to debate about at this time since so little was known about Ultra Beasts. Things would start to get interesting in November of 2017 with the release of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. These games introduced 4 more Ultra Beasts: Blacephalon, Stakataka, Poipole, and its evolution, Naganadel. These games added the Ultra Warp Ride, a new gameplay feature that let you travel through Ultra Space to find rare Pokemon, including legendaries and Ultra Beasts. The reason I made that distinction was because the announcement of this feature on the Pokemon website specified that you'll be able to discover Pokemon that aren't found in the Alola region by entering these warp holes, including legendary Pokemon and Ultra Beasts. This was the first time these two groups were mentioned together officially, and a clear distinction was made. Another thing about the Ultra Warp Ride was that you could only catch one of each available legendary Pokemon. After you caught a specific legendary, you wouldn't be able to encounter it again. This was different from Ultra Beasts since you could encounter and catch as many of them as you wanted. This showed Ultra Beasts were not really rare like most legendary Pokemon. Now there was a valid argument for both sides. Players who said Ultra Beasts were legendary referenced the game's code and similarities between the two groups, like being part of the no eggs found egg group and their high base stats. On the other hand, players who thought Ultra Beasts weren't legendary cited things like the Ultra Warp Ride announcement and their Pokedex entries, many of which said that although it's alien to this world and a danger here, it's apparently a common organism in the world where it normally lives. This was such a dividing topic that even 2 of the largest Pokemon news sites, Bulbapedia and Cerebi, couldn't agree. On Cerebi, Ultra Beasts were listed as a category of legendary Pokemon and grouped with the sub-legendaries. Bulbapedia, on the other hand, listed them as not being legendaries, but they did acknowledge the similarities between the two groups. The debate around this topic was growing, but it was just getting started. 2018 marked the year of legendary Pokemon. For the entire year, legendaries were distributed to the Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon games, and a website was made showcasing all of the legendary Pokemon thus far. The website had all of the Pokemon you'd expect, from Articuno to Dialga to the Tapus, but more important than what it had was what it didn't have. This website, which featured every legendary Pokemon, didn't include any of the Ultra Beasts. On top of that, there was a 10-question quiz on the website, and the final question asked which of these is not a legendary Pokemon, with the correct answer being the Ultra Beast Pheromosa, implying none of the Ultra Beasts were legendary. By now, the Pokemon Company themselves had confirmed in multiple places that Ultra Beasts were not considered legendary. Many players felt this topic had reached its end now that it was stated so many times. Part of the community was still adamant that Ultra Beasts were legendary because of what was in the code. But with so much evidence pointing to the other side, the answer seemed clear. In late 2020, the Crown Tundra DLC for Pokemon Sword and Shield was released. A big focus of this DLC was finding legendary Pokemon. In the story, players would follow legendary clues that would lead them to finding these Pokemon. After completing the first 3 clues, you would find a 4th legendary clue, and this one allowed you to find Ultra Beasts. Also, a year later in 2021, the Mythical Melee online competition was held, and it only allowed legendary and mythical Pokemon to be used. However, Ultra Beasts were allowed to participate, supporting the idea that Ultra Beasts were legendary Pokemon. There were now official sources supporting both sides of the argument. It seemed like this whole debate was coming from a lack of consistency. There were tons of official statements and differences in the games that showed Ultra Beasts weren't legendary. But at the same time, the very code of the games, along with some other information, pointed to Ultra Beasts being legendary Pokemon. Both sides had evidence to support their case, but picking a side almost meant questioning the validity of the other. For this to ever end, a consensus needed to be reached, and only the Pokemon Company could make it happen. In November 2022, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were released. They came with a lot, but the important thing for our story was that a massive change was made. In the game's code, Ultra Beasts were no longer a part of the Sub-Legend category, but their own Ultra Beast category. Finally, since their introduction in 2016, Ultra Beasts were made separate from legendary Pokemon in the game's code. Ultra Beasts weren't legendary Pokemon, they weren't sub-legendary Pokemon, but they were also not normal Pokemon. Ultra Beasts are their own group of Pokemon. They all have the Beast Boost ability, are easier to catch with Beast Balls, and have codenames. Ultra Beasts are Ultra Beasts, and that's where things stand today. It's incredible how such a simple topic became this massive debate. There's been things in the past that divided the Pokemon community, but this is one I didn't expect. Ultra Beasts have always been controversial, but I've always loved them because of how unique they all were, especially compared to other Pokemon. This is one of the most researched videos I've ever done, so I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again.